Hey Sandra. Hey Sandra. Hey Jenny. Susie. How are y'all? Okay, y'all. Y'all know sometimes I open these lives to intuitive readings. Hey Christina. Hey Susie. Hey Thomas. Sometimes I open these. Hey Amanda. Sometimes I open these lives to these intuitive readings, but if you're expecting that today, I just want you to go ahead and know that that's not one of these days. Sometimes the universe gently nudges me in a direction and says, you should probably talk about that. I've been writing a memoir, a book of poetry, and things come up today. So I think everyone in here knows my story, hopefully. But anyway, I'm going to continue talking, and because this is an important message, and I know that the people who need it will be aligned with it and find it. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Erica, and about 10 years ago, I was placed on hospice with this rare, incurable, terminal disease called Shaw-Drager syndrome or multisystem atrophy. The prognosis was 6 months to a year. I was placed on hospice and was fully expected to pass away within those 6 months to a year. At the end of the year, against all of my loved ones' advice and the medical professionals' advice, I decided I was going to pull myself off of hospice, and I wasn't ready to die. So I began these new experimental treatments, and that made me healthy enough to carry and deliver a child. At the time of my C-section, I coded and was quickly resuscitated on the surgical table and then moved to a room in the birthing unit. And a couple hours after I delivered my daughter, I looked up at the clock and I knew something was about to happen. So time stood still, and it was irrelevant, but the only thing that mattered at the time, and everything changed. I lost all the blood in my body and lost my life for over a minute, and in that minute my entire life changed. There's something about death that never fully lets go, and something about love that refuses to. Today, you may not know what this is, but this is what I have left of Sadie. This is my precious golden retriever in a Ziploc bag in an Altoid sour container. And I keep this beside my bed in a drawer. And I want to say this. There have been a lot of these moments in my life that don't just break you. They can burn you. This is something precious, something that's gone, but not lost. Because love doesn't vanish in fire. It turns into something different. It reshapes. And today, I'm not holding this just as a simple symbol of death, but of what can still be sacred even in ruin. So in these moments that don't break us, but they burn us, you don't need to I like have this thing where people always say, like, rising from the ashes like a phoenix. You don't need to do that, because sometimes surviving is enough. Sometimes surviving is all you can do. Sometimes crawling from the fire is holy, because ashes are not the end. It's where you begin again. I wrote this poem, and then I'm just going to talk to y'all for a minute. It is, not my normal style, but this is what came to me, so y'all just bear with me. It says, what I know about home. Home ain't four walls and a throw blanket. It ain't a welcome mat with your last name stitched proud. I used to think it was. A lock that turned. A roof that didn't leak. A place to tuck my hurt beneath the coffee table Bible. But then the fire came. Not the kind you see on the news, but the kind that starts behind your smile. Quiet as shame, hot as disappointment. The kind that takes its time and still steals everything. By the time I felt the smoke, it was already in my lungs. The pictures curled. My name didn't sound right in my own mouth. The mirror didn't even flinch when I cried. I didn't rise like they say. No wings, no shine. I crawled. Ugly, aching, dragging what was left through the days that didn't care, and still, somehow, in the waiting, I found a pulse. A laugh that came from my gut and not the mask. A child's hand, soft and sure, wrapping mine like a promise. Look, Mama, we made it. Now, home is the sink full of dishes. The hiss of coffee on a too hot morning. It's the soft weight of survival settled into every crack. It's the breath that I don't have to earn anymore. The bed that I get to unmake because I woke up. I built this life from soot and stubbornness, one boundary at a time, one honest yes and one hard-won no. With second-hand hope and a little corner by the window where light reminds me, damn, look what you've made it through. Look how far you've come. So no, this home ain't a place. It's the life I built after the old one burned down. I want to ask you, if you've ever lost something, someone, a dream that you had, a piece of yourself, any of those things, I want you to know this. The ashes may be all that's left, but so can the love. And from the love, you can rebuild. The ashes don't mean it's over. It means something mattered. And I want you to think about that. What have you lost in your own life that forced you to rebuild, to start again? What has burned that you thought you needed for survival, but you made it without it? Like, I think about that in my own life, like, how many people that I thought I couldn't live without, but yet here I am, living without them. And what did you discover in the rubble? Not all endings are disasters. In fact, some and most are invitations. It doesn't feel like it when you're in it, though. And I understand that. I totally understand that. And not everything we rebuild is glamorous. I know that sometimes it's quiet and behind schedule and slow, but it's still sacred. Home is not a fixed location. And it's not a single person. It's the integrity within ourselves that we return to when we remember who we are made to be. And the inner shelter that we construct, like the healthy boundaries. We're in a world where a lot of people have lost home. Whether it's through grief, sickness, relationships, injustice, burnout, displacement. But we are also the people who rebuild. I want you to think about the bricks. Like each thing in your life is a brick. And what is something that you were proud of after you lost everything? Name one brick. It's like a boundary you've honored. Like, I know my biggest brick is not giving in to burning myself out anymore. Not going over the top to please people. A truth that you've told that was hard. Like, I know recently I've just had to tell myself some hard truths. And that is like another brick to rebuild. A joy that you've claimed. I remember this last time I was in the hospital, and my husband said, after I came out of surgery, a nurse was asking me, "So what do you do for work?" When did that become the question? I stopped her, and my husband said, I grabbed her hands and I said, "I am a seeker of joy." And whether it was the medication or all of my life experiences compiled into that moment to know that I know that that's what's important in this lifetime. That's all that matters. I'm a seeker of joy and love. When did we start becoming labeled by our jobs instead of our passion? What's one piece, one brick of your life that you can look at and it reminds you that I built this? I made it through. I'm still standing despite all the odds. We all have them in our lifetime. And the ashes don't mean it's over. It means something mattered. It meant that you lived a life worth living. And love is the only way forward. It's the only way to rebuild anything. Your life, this world. We all have sacred journeys, and I'm honored that some of you choose to share your time and space with me. And I want you to know that I appreciate each of you. Sometimes it's big and sometimes it's small, and sometimes people just hope to get a message and nothing else. The message is this today. You don't have to rise like the phoenix from the ashes. Sometimes all you have to do is just keep crawling, because crawling is sacred and holy. There are so many ways to get lost and confused in this world. It's so chaotic and overwhelming, and I've had this vision that things will begin to get even more confusing if you don't know your true and highest self. My husband and I had this talk, and I know that these ashes, Sadie, what's left of Sadie, is precious to me. I keep her. This is one of my favorite fruits. She was a little fruity sometimes, and a little sweet and a little sour. So this may not seem like a great resting place, but she's scattered about the land. She's planted in some trees. This is what I have left of her. I was thinking, we buried my Aunt Martha Kirk on a Thursday, and I thought about storytelling. then, because she was my Meemaw's sister. And bless it, she was so misunderstood in this lifetime. She had a husband and a son, and she lost her only son. And I remember one day riding home, we had been visiting my Aunt Martha, and she was just so hateful and so different than my Meemaw. My Meemaw was like this ball of unconditional love, that abundance, and she was so poor, but yet somehow she just fed her whole community and loved unconditionally, like, and just provided all this. And then in parallel and in tandem, her youngest sister, 18 years apart, was cold and bitter and harsh and could say really nasty, hurtful things. And I remember on the way home one day, I said, Meemaw, how is Aunt Martha your sister? How were y'all raised by the same people? And she told me something, and I don't know, there are some things that just like stick in your brain, like imprinted forever. And it doesn't have to be anything big. Like, I can think of several people in my lifetime who have told me things that have drastically changed my perspective or my life. And she said, Erica, we don't always have to understand people. We don't always judge them. But you should know that she's had her own life, and it's been unkind to her. And she could be different, but she's too overwhelmed with grief to see past herself. And I took that in my 10-year-old brain and imprinted it forever. Because grief it's a funny thing. Grief can come up at any time and any place. It can punch you in the throat unexpectedly. It can bring you to your knees. You can be standing in line at the grocery store and have tears stream down your face. Or it can come out as a sharp tongue. But if you are living a life that is worth living, your feet will touch and find both sharp stones and soft moss. Your hands will carry garden dirt and grief all in the same breath. And that's how you know you're living a life worth living. When you can stop and take in all of it. And I don't know why that stuck with me, but I think about that all the time. As she was laid down into the ground, I thought about storytellers. And there's a conversation that resurfaced with my friend this morning. I say friend, it's more like, I don't know what I can call a surrogate stand-in for my father. And grief. I feel the world so deeply sometimes, and it's hard to explain. There are these moments where you feel so deeply for other people. There were 12 people at my Aunt Martha's funeral. I was one of them. The preacher was another. She did not make a great impression. My grandmother had over 1,000 people at her funeral. We had to open up a whole new space. There were over 500 at my dad's funeral. The whole entire town showed up for my grandmother. 12 people showed up for my Aunt Martha to remember her life. She was not a nice woman. But I know that she's been reunited with her son. I can't imagine. Sometimes you can't get past the moment. And I think my grandmother knew that if I was going to live a life worth living, that I needed to know in that moment that there's a choice. You can let grief define you. You can let certain things in your life overwhelm you and take center stage. And losing a child would certainly be one of them. Having a diagnosis and you have 6 months to live is another. It changes your brain chemistry. You go mad, you go mental, you're just in this state. And I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if there's a word for it, but it's this part where you become separated from yourself and you can't think straight. You can't move in the ways that you need to move because it's center stage. I remember I became so hyper obsessed when I was on hospice, like super obsessed. Like, I need to find a plan for my children. I need to, I don't have anything to give away, but I wanted like a will made up, like of all my silly stuff, like this spoon that nobody is going to fight over, but it was important to me to have a plan because it was the only thing I could control. And Aunt Martha's tongue was the only thing she had control over in that moment. And as all 12 of us stood at this graveside, there were no funeral services, it was just a graveside burial, I thought to myself, this is not a moment. Like, I don't know what happens when you have a funeral, because I didn't get that far, but I know that I could see whenever I died. And I can't imagine her going through her life review and knowing the things that she was grieving over. The things that made her the way that she was. I can't imagine her feeling all those things and then watching her on funeral knowing that there are 12 people there. And to be honest, I almost didn't go. I don't even think I went for Aunt Martha. I think I went for my grandmother, my Meemaw. There's so many things in life that can break you and burn you and destroy you if you let it. But at some point, we have to step forward. Even if we can't step, we have to crawl. You have to crawl past it. You have to crawl through it. You have to feel it to heal it. Aunt Martha just kept suppressing it further and further and pushing it all down, just swallowing it like a big fat stone that wouldn't go down. Instead of rising from her ashes, she burned everything she touched. People, places. I remember she got a thank you. I'm sorry, just I asked my Aunt Martha if I could talk to y'all about her today, and she's saying, yeah, but you better tell the truth. And your personality does not change once you've crossed over. You are still that same person. When you reincarnate, you have a chance to grow and change and evolve. But you see these things, and I wanted to share a story. I remember her getting a job after her husband died. And she was a door greeter at Walmart. And she was fired. Because I don't think that they were prepared for Aunt Martha Kirk. When I'm talking about her, I hope that you understand that I see her in a different light now. And we have to see past each other. We have to see the hurt and the guilt and the shame and the burdens that each of us carry. And choose not to judge each other anymore, but to love each other. Because that is the only thing that will survive and transcend. I was holding this container earlier whenever I wrote that poem, Home Ain't Four Walls, and here's what I know about life, what dying taught me about living. We will all have choices in our life. We can all have moments that burn really hard, really fast. And then we can choose to keep going or just lay there in the soot. I hope you choose yourself, and I hope you choose life again. I'm thinking about this as my Aunt Martha's here now with my grandmother. My mom brought her through for me, and I told her I'm sorry. I'm sorry that there were only 12 people at your funeral. I'm sorry that you were so stuck in your grief that you couldn't see past yourself. And my gosh, y'all, you have to see past pain. We have to start seeing each other deeper, more meaningful. When you look at the world and see these people acting nuts or being mean, or you don't have to excuse their behavior, because I certainly didn't excuse my Aunt Martha. Like, I remember showing up to her house sometimes, and the whole time she would just be mad at me because I didn't come sooner. And now that I can see her grief was all consuming, it's a weird place to be, because for a long time I just thought, why couldn't she choose to get past it? Why couldn't she just push through it? Why couldn't she just do different? I've been through so many moments in my life that have broken me and burned me, and chose to stand up. And if I couldn't stand up, I chose to crawl out. And then I realized it's not my place to judge. It's my place to love and support. You know, there's all these things. The reason I started talking about my Aunt Martha, because I was thinking about storytellers. And this conversation came up again about how every story that we have been told has been told from a one viewpoint perspective. Like, if an author takes you through a journey, it's from their perspective. If a historian takes you through history, it's through their perspective. The victors write the history. And that's why I've revered this collection of essays by Michael Montaigne. Because we have all these recollections of throughout history about how barbaric the native tribes were. And his essays were from a different viewpoint, a different perspective, because he had sit among the tribes. And he knew that they weren't barbaric. But the ones that were saying they were barbaric were actually the barbarians themselves. We've been fed all these narratives from, okay, I'm sorry if I have male users, please don't get weird about this, but all of the stories that we have been told from a very male narrative. Like, even throughout Greek history, the philosophers were all men. So what if we looked at things in a different way? What if we saw Helen of Troy from her perspective? Or Athena was only being used for her body and her beauty. How would that make her feel? Why wouldn't she want to change the narrative and flip this? Look, we don't need to flip tables anymore. We need to flip scripts. And the only way that we can do that is to tell new versions. And they can't just be one-sided, matriarchal. They can't just be one-sided. There has to be a cohesive collection, a balance. I know that death has taught me so much about life that I thought I knew. And there's this whole thing about like the divine feminine rising. Yes, I'm all for it. Yes, I'm ready. But let me tell you the balance. I would not be having this realization, this conversation, had I not had a male counterpart to bounce this off of. Because we have talked and spiraled upward and upward and upward. Because his mind thinks differently than mine. My father has placed this person in my life for balance. Because we know thank you for that. We've read all of these religious texts. I have the Book of Mormon, the Quran, the Bible, the Gitas, the history of religion, the ancient religious texts of China and India. Well, I even put the Tolkien up here with religion. So these are all the deep dives that I did after the one year after my death. I struggled to find what I had been shown and what I had seen, because nothing that I had been taught in the Bible was making sense to me anymore. And then I realized all of these stories have been told by the same energetic archetype, repeating. It's time to evolve and transcend. We cannot keep doing these things. Look, there are, I live in this great big area where there were Chickasaw, Chickamauga. Like, I live in the, my family came here through the Appalachian Mountains, like Appalachia. So, I know that my family never committed any atrocities, because my family was poor and they were working and living off the land and trying their best. So we can't keep judging each other for things that are being done to us by the same 5 corporations. We can't keep punishing each other. We have to. I remember the first time in the Bible, I was a young child, because I was heavily indoctrinated and never had a chance to think for my own self. I was taught what to believe, not how to think. But I remember the first time about thinking the story about the Tower of Babel. And why would an all-loving, all-knowing God destroy that? Why wouldn't he want everyone to have one tongue and one peace and one love? And then I realized, because if you have that, then there's no need for opposition or control. It's just one person. It's one family. It's one tribe. I'm going to tell you something, what I know. I know that there were 4 original tribes on this earth. And they were always meant to come together, to learn from each other, to celebrate and cherish each other's differences. And once they found differences, that was their downfall. Because they were never meant to separate. But each time they would come and separate, and then they would destroy humanity. Now, this fifth tribe is a blend of all 4 tribes in a star system. And those people, there are 5 tribes now here on Earth. And this awakening, this transition, this transcending, this evolution revolution, as Miss Connie calls it, this will be referred to in future as the Great Awakening of the Pleistocene Era. And our children and our grandchildren will never imagine a place where people can be so easily manipulated and controlled. They're going to say, how did that happen? How were people so subjugated and oppressed? Well, here's the real deal. If you want to know the real deal, here's how it happens. Because they keep us poor people, the people who have enough to just make it, they keep us hating one another. They divide us by colors, by race, by class, by creed, and they all want us to think that we're different, and that, oh, you don't want to be around that person because they're taking your jobs. Really? I look at this world now after my death and I think, how is this whole thing so stupid? Like, all of this is just so stupid. We work so we can have a house that we don't even own, and at any time it can be taken. We tell our children to move out and do the same as soon as they turn 18. We tell them to go to college, but only 5. This whole 5 thing keeps repeating for me too. There's only 5 jobs in the United States that actually require a college degree. But yet we'll incur thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for college. Like, what are we doing? Everyone can see it now. Here's what I want you to know. That once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you know it, and you don't know what to do about it, then you're there. You're there. Here's what I want to say. There are many of you who are wondering what to do next. And as if you feel something in your heart, you have to follow that. You have to jump ship. There still has to be some action involved. I don't know what that looks like for you. Honestly, I really don't know what it looks like for me all the time. I know that we are having a seriously heated debate about the school system and whether I want Olive to be in that, because I know some of y'all know what happened to me in school, and I don't want her subjected to anything like that. We're just one big experiment, and I don't want to be part of that anymore. I have no interest in it. So here today I'm declaring that I am a sovereign being, and that we shouldn't fight so hard for systems that have never served any of us. And we shouldn't continue to being allowed to be divided by trivial, stupid things. The amount of melanin in our skin, how dedicated we are to a company. Because here's what I know. You want to know what I know? On May 30th, it was 12 years ago. May 30th, 12 years ago, so whatever year that was. I'll tell you what happened to me. I had spent 70 to 80 hours working a week. Every week. I was on call to do bandage dressings for a doctor. I was on call to do surgical check-ins. I was on call all the time. I removed myself from my family and pledged loyalty to this company. And on May 30th, 12 years ago, I passed out, clean out. It wasn't the first time, but this time I was with a patient. and the patient was scared. So I never got to go back to work again. And the company that I had spent 12 years prior to, actually 15 years, because I was with this doctor for years previous. So 15 years of my life that I had dedicated to this doctor, to this company. At that moment that I passed out and went into the hospital, there was no severance package. There was no thank you note. There was no goodbye note. There was a request for resignation. I'm telling y'all this for a reason, because it's only going to change when enough people agree that it's ludicrous. Only change will happen when enough of us decide maybe it shouldn't be this way anymore. Maybe we should go about our own ways. And this has been done time and time and time again throughout history. Think about, we visited Cahokia and Mound City. These huge mound complexes, right? The Mayan civilizations, the pyramids, and Göbekli Tepe have been intentionally buried and hidden. But what story there? And who's telling that story? We're being told a story, but what's the real story? Because here's what I think it is. I think enough people got together and then they realized, hey, we're being controlled by these uppers. Why do they get better things than us? Maybe it's time to just go back and live off the land. So they weren't abandoned because of disease. Maybe they were abandoned because people were freaking tired of it. So I'm not telling you to go out and start a revolution on a random Monday. But if you must, do it with love in your heart. Love is... I wrote this in part of my book, so you're going to get a sneak peek. I said, love... How did I phrase it? That does not withstand brokenness is not love. It is an agreement. So love that can not withstand brokenness is not love. It's an agreement. It's a convenience. And I was no longer convenient for that company. I was no longer convenient for my husband whenever I got diagnosed. I was no longer convenient for people. I was a burden. I was a liability. So here's what I'm telling you. Your family and your friends are the people that you should work for. We all have to strive and maintain this kind of lifestyle, right? We can't be on the streets. I know that people have been placed directly in my path for this reason, because I've met Amy Longo and kind of see her as this new Buddha. Let's just give up everything. I'll carry my belongings on my backpack and I'll say F the systems. That cannot be my life. So I'm telling you that we all have different versions of how this works. And my version does not need a total collapse to be rebuilt. We can gather the ashes and make bricks and build something new. I think there are a lot of times in our own lives that we talk ourselves out of things. There are these energetic archetypes that repeat themselves. But here's the problem. The energy has gotten to where it can't go anywhere. It's grown and evolved and changed these time and times again. But now they're waiting for new stories to be written. They're waiting for new stories to be told. New narratives, new orations, new versions of events. We are creators. We were made to create the reality that we desire. And I want to tell you something, like, I remember a time when I was on home. I knew that I had 6 months to a year to live. Had I accepted that as my reality, I know I would have died. But I never accepted that as my reality. I was completely delusional. I was completely, to most people, I would have appeared insane. Because my husband was very concerned. When I pulled myself off of hospice, he was like, well, what were you doing? Like, I'm not ready to die. I've made peace with death. I've made peace with dying, but I don't want to die. We all have choices. There are all these major benchmark moments where we can go right or left. There's no wrong way. You being told that there's good and bad and right and wrong, that's at the bottom of the triangle. Duality is at the bottom of the triangle. And until you get past that point of duality, and you can see Aunt Martha Kirk wasn't right or wrong. She was just what was. She was just herself. She was just the grief that life handed her. It was the hand she was dealt. And whenever you can see beyond someone's pain that they're part of you, that's when things start to change for you. That's when real magic starts to happen. You alchemize and you grow and evolve and change. Okay, I gotta tell y'all about my pecan tree. For those of you who are new in here, you'll not know about my pecan tree, but she's the oldest tree on this land, and she is a special tree. Like, I connected with her after my death in a way that was really special and true. Well, the past few days, she's not been responding to me, and she has an infestation of gall wasp, and so the elderberry underneath her is looking beautiful and lush. She's got elderflower heads, and she's going to be producing fine. And I asked the elderberry, I said, what am I going to do about this? And she said, this is a problem that's going to take time. And I thought, my pecan tree is giving me freaking analogies, like, for every single point of history that we've been in. So the pecan, it knows that this is not a simple problem. This is not a simple fix. It's not something that can be done in an instant. There's no magic cure. There's no magic wand. There's no magic pill for her to take. This is going to be a 5 to 10 year plan to get these gall wasps resolved. Now, since this has been going on since religion began, the control, the domination, the subjugation, it's going to take longer than 5 to 10 years. But we can do this. We can start this. And it's not about being a hero or a villain. It's about having a different story to tell, a different narrative, a different perspective, a different viewpoint. We are both, at times, the hero and the villain, depending on who's telling the story. I've poured my heart out today, and I know a lot of y'all were hoping for messages, and I'm not in a good place to do those today, and so, because they take a lot of energy from me, and I'm not going to I'm going to use this brick, this building moment, and say that this is my brick. And I'm proud of myself for using it. And honoring it. And trusting it. Because I know that it's really easy for me to get pulled into these, and I know a lot of people today are asking for answers. And here's what I want to tell you as I close, okay? Sadie was part of a really important time in my life. She licked tears I didn't mean to cry. She curled next to me and sat with me when the kids were at school and Trey was at work, and I was hanging on to a single thread of life. She was more than a dog. She's ashes now, but not because she wasn't special, and not because she didn't make it through the fire. It's just that she began again. And that's what I'm asking you to do. Because these ashes in here, they don't mean it's over. It means it mattered. It means love burned bright, and I was living a life worth living. And even though the form has changed, this has given me courage and softness and even fight. And it's still here. It's still with me. And I'm still building. Brick by ash. By sacred brick. I'm making this life my home. And I know you can too. I love y'all. We'll talk soon.